Hello, and welcome back to Owens Bay. In today's episode, we're going to continue with our ambitious waterfront revitalization, completing the project with the addition of some luxury condos. But the real excitement in today's episode is happening in the downtown core, which is about to undertake a major transformation. We'll be crafting a stunning new civic center anchored by an historic city hall. This will be joined by a museum and art gallery, creating a true cultural center to the city. In addition, new unique public art installations will give our downtown streets some extra character. But the main attraction for today's build will be a new historic style office tower, a 1950s inspired skyscraper that's going to become the iconic heart of our downtown. My name is Gyves, and let's get started. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff we're going to get through today. This section of the town we're looking at right now is going to not look anything like this by the time we're done. It's going to be interesting. But first we have to finish off this little section down here. These tiny residential homes here are not going to cut it along this waterfront anymore. My thinking here is I'm going to be using some buildings from the Japanese set here. I want to create this huge complex. So in order to achieve this, I'm going to combine the regular Japanese buildings with some prop variations of them as well. This will allow me to build out a rather expansive structure here, but not overcrowd the area. Also, some of the pathfinding for some of these buildings, like how they line up to the roads, is not optimal. So with the props, I'm allowed to, I can place the buildings however I want, which allows me to get around that. Using prop buildings is not the most optimal solution because obviously you don't get the benefit of the actual building, but in situations like this where the population density was so low to begin with, even with prop buildings mixed in, it's still a huge increase to population density, so it still works. We gotta get rid of that awful fleshy color that these buildings have and give it something a little more contemporary. Luckily, these buildings do come with underground parking, but we're going to add a bit more to the back end here. And it's a nice way to fill up this awkward space. These buildings are rather plain, so I'm trying to figure out a way to liven them up a little bit. And I came up with this idea to use the planters along the edges here to, make them a little more upscale. Fun fact, the line tool and the stick to surfaces function don't work together, so I had to hand place all of this. It was a little time consuming, but it's just repetitive more than anything else. Not a big deal. I'm going to be using some of Real Vision's decals here, these vines, to give the impression that plants are flowing down the side of the building. we're just going to skip through quite a bit of it here. It's really repetitive work, but I'm just going to show you the highlights. For the roofs, I thought, rooftop gardens would be a thing here considering the views. There's no roof access, so we're going to use some UK garden buildings here for that. This is going to be constructed out of planters and lounge chairs and patio sets and everything like that. Now I have to do this for the other two buildings. I'm not going to show that. I'm just going to do this one, and we're just going to jump ahead here and see everything completed. Okay, with that out of the way, we're going to now focus our attention on this awkward little part of the city here, which didn't really turn into anything the first time around. These single-family homes no longer seem important, so we're going to get rid of all of this. What the city is lacking is like a true center to it. So I thought a city hall would be a good addition. And I thought the French city hall would be perfect. And then I placed it. And then I saw, oh, it's really tiny. For a city this size, it might be a little too small. So I was thinking about expansion for it. So we're going over the civic building here. It's perfect. It's not actually a city hall, but this in combination with an actual city hall, I think it's a nice modernization of an historic building. I didn't want any of the pathing or the surfaces or pretty much most of this stuff. Unfortunately, I've run into a few issues here with pathing after I've deleted so much. You'll see it as the video progresses. And this is the start of several public art installations that I started to think about. One thing lacking in the game is public art. I mean, we obviously have wall murals and that sort of stuff, but actual like sculptures and stuff, there isn't a lot of options. I'm going to get a little creative here and try to think outside the box and make a few. Now, there was a post office down here, which didn't make any sense. So I took that out and I'm going to replace it with the Eastern European one. It seems much more fitting for a downtown cityscape. And I never liked this building. I wanted something, like a feature here, and Eastern European round building here is perfect. We have to remember New Sutherland's skyline is not huge. It's not like a major urban center. It's kind of like a second tier city, I guess. Things are going to be a bit smaller scale here. And I wasn't really planning on moving right into the downtown, but once I started, I'm like, we need an iconic building for our city. The story for the city is it kind of peaks in the mid 20th century, so I need a building that kind of represents that peak. And this media building here makes the most sense out of everything, and that's going to be our showpiece. And go for a bit of recolor here. Now this media building probably holds the local TV station or something. Of course it would need some sort of broadcasting equipment on the roof. Once I did this, it became quite obvious, like, why can't we put radio masts on top of buildings where they would belong in large cities? It's a bit of a mystery. Anyway, this is just a prop version of the radio tower. I think it fits perfectly up here. And these two buildings are almost the same height, so this one has to go. And we're going to replace it with something a little smaller in stature. Also, kind of its own showpiece, keeping in mind our skyline is going to be fairly low. We're not going too high. So give it a little bit of recolor. It kind of looks like something built in the 1960s, 1970s. That's kind of perfect. I think this skyline needed one taller building. And I'm going to go with this one. Technically, this would make this the tallest building on the skyline, but the radio mast on the other one is still higher. This building sort of represents the last hurrah, like the 1980s, where the city's last gasp in the previous century to kind of like revitalize itself. And this felt just a little too cliche for the Pacific Northwest, so no. What starts here is this very long process where I shuffle buildings around because I don't want to delete anything. But as you'll see as we go here, slowly but surely, I start deleting out all this stuff because none of it works anymore. And I had to really rethink the area, like what did I actually want down here? So one by one, they will all go. And I'm trying to tie this into the waterfront revitalization that we did on the other side of the port here. That took place in the 80s and kind of started this catalyst of this, reimagining what the city was about, like the city council, right? So that kicked off this major redevelopment on this side with new office towers, new buildings, like a brand new waterfront, totally re-envisioned. Since these three buildings shared the same sort of architecture, I wanted to try to arrange them in some sort as one building project. So I shuffle them around until I find an arrangement that I like. A lot of buildings here are going to come and go as I put things in, leave them there for a while, think about them, see what I think, and then either I like them or I don't. And so, yeah, things are going to change a bit here. And there we go. So removing all the pathing has caused this issue with this building. All it really needs is me to just move it ever so slightly and it goes away. But every time I touch anything around it, yeah, I get those error messages. It's rather annoying. I thought this might be fun to include here. This is pretty current, like this century, probably the first, couple decades of this century. It was, a trendy practice, probably still is, to do sort of like ecological restoration projects in cities. So right here, we're going to have a narrative that the city had restored a chunk of the waterfront here to its natural state. Natural being in quotation marks. It's nice to see this seawall so well used. So I'm imagining how these buildings will look from the water, and what would be the best way to arrange them for the best look. And this is what I've come up with here. Now for the museum art gallery. We're going to use the library from the China Pack here. This is a great looking building. For a city our size, the scale of it is quite acceptable for think of a new city project. This building would have been this century. It's the right scale. The modern art gallery is way too large for this city. And the nice thing about this particular building is we can imagine it as one half being the museum and the other half being the art gallery. Of course, it just functions as the library, but that is also useful. And I trimmed off all the extra bits so the reflecting pools are right up against the roads. I think this is a great look for this building. All that extra stuff around it, it's just clutter. I'm going to be using surfaces here to tie all these buildings together into one complex. One rather annoying thing with this episode is because of where I'm working, there's a lot of like really small, tight spaces. Sometimes trying to get the right camera angle is really difficult. So a lot of this is going to be rather awkward looking. Okay, I'm just going to spend some time detailing the City Hall. There are a few issues here. These white lines, I can't seem to get rid of them, so I have to come up with a way to hide them. Backstory I'm thinking for the City Hall is, what I'm thinking here is the smaller building, the older historic building, was the historic City Hall for the town, and obviously the town outgrew it. We can spin the narrative that at some point in the past, the city hired some famous French architect to come in to design their city hall, which is a fairly common practice. So this is me trying to hide the white lines. It worked out all right, actually. This is another building where the props around it make no sense. A skyscraper like this, you obviously want that entrance right on the corner of a street, right? Not set back like it is. Okay, let's turn our attention to this round office building. The thing we have to remember here is in a city the size of New Sunderland, this building would be an actual major urban landmark. We're going to give it a little more attention and turn it into that. I thought some reflecting pools around the outside of it would be a nice addition. Once I had that building in place, these buildings here no longer made any sense. So we're going to say this whole block was rebuilt around the same time. Now I have these blank walls here, which I thought murals, but then I thought, well, wait a minute, let's try more art installations here. Maybe we could do something with these heads. And I'm going to need quite a few of them. This turned out to be a fairly long process. This is my first attempt at it here, and initially I was thinking more of like a random pattern to them on the wall. But after living with it for a while, I really didn't like it. So I will come back here. And turn it into more of a geometric pattern later, but I'll do that off screen. It took quite a while to get that done. This city all of a sudden seems to have much more of arts focused. I'm thinking a city that's invested so much in the arts probably has film festivals. This is a beautiful building. And that's the first tourist I've seen taking selfies of themselves outside of a building. There's a few more. I find it interesting that the theater's main business is to serve beverages. Okay, there's a bit missing here. I was playing with some buildings and I wasn't filming, and then stuff happened. Now I have this. So I spliced together two Eastern European buildings together to make this larger house. I was trying my hand creating some townhomes here on the other side. I really like these. Unfortunately, they have pathing issues and the hearses can't get to the people inside, so they have death icons that will never go away. I gotta come up with a better solution for this. It might simply be mixing in a few prop versions of these buildings with real ones so there's no pathing issues. I'll have to play around with it a bit and see what I can come up with. I really like the look of them though. They do kind of have this look of more upscale townhomes. Something, you know, a little more flashy than just the row homes. Now we're going to pretend this is some historic home in the downtown, possibly the mayor's house. I'm not really too sure. We can maybe imagine it not having any, like, nobody actually lives there anymore. It might be a historical building. It might be like it might give walking tours. It might actually be its own museum. I'm really quite excited by it because that, like, splicing those buildings together and just getting totally unique looking, you know, homes and stuff. That's really quite fun. Now, this building's been sitting down on the waterfront for quite some time, and it's always bothered me that the rounded section doesn't face the water. There's a parking garage entrance there, so you can't face it that way. What I thought I would do here is take the prop version of it and splice it onto the backside. So now I have the view of the waterfront that I want. I also have this interesting rooftop deck here, which is going to turn into a restaurant. Now going to integrate this school into this block a little better. It's kind of sticking out a bit like a sore thumb here, so we're just going to move to the center of the block and surround it with some other buildings, so it's a little more integrated. This was really kind of an annoying task. Trying to rebuild a neighborhood after it's already established is like just trying to work with all the surfaces down here. There's so many different things, and it just gets so cluttered. Unfortunately, it doesn't make for very good video watching. For the base of the media building, this was a bit tricky, trying to fill in this space. I'm splicing in the prop version of the square building as maybe a modern addition to the building built at some point. And we're just going to offset it here. There are some row homes down here, and I'm not even going to move them because this is a prop. It doesn't interact with them. So I'm just going to, hide them inside. This will give the illusion of people coming and going from it from time to time. And I thought another reflecting pool would be a great way to fill in some of this space here. Another tourist. And because of the historic nature of our town here, I'm going to include the marvelous marble. It's can't have film festivals all the time, and places need to make money, so don't get to the entire downtown core here in this video. There's quite a lot of work to do, and to be honest, a lot of it is just tedious shuffling things around and editing out buildings and stuff like that. I'm probably not going to show a lot of it unless I'm doing some sort of major project. A lot of that's going to be done off camera. Here I'm just reimagining the waterfront a bit. The trees were maybe a bit too cluttered, so we're going to edit them back and leave a lot of open space here so you can actually see the buildings behind them. In the downtown, the star of the downtown are the buildings, not the trees. It's not like the rural areas. Okay. I think it was last week now. If you haven't seen it yet, Sully came out with his latest episode for his LA series, the Marina. If you have not seen that, go watch it right now. It's absolutely amazing. And I'm going to borrow some of those ideas here to create a much smaller marina. This city is not going to have such a huge marina, but it obviously would have one. So I'm going to make an attempt here to build one. These are Harbor Master J's dock props, which make this task so much easier, and they look so good. They have far much more detail on them than I would ever bother to do myself. Now, the marina would need some sort of office building. So we're going to use one of the UK garden houses for this, and one of the very small European businesses. This is just a prop version of this, so it won't interact with anything here. These are absolutely wonderful. These are also by Harbor Master J. They're catamarans. They're just a construction out of parts, but like my city, Pacific Northwest, it's in desperate need of sailboats, and this fills that niche perfectly for the moment. Doing a little alteration here to the waterfront. I didn't like those buildings. Going to put in the Coda Park. I like the building. The one thing I don't like about it is the color of the building will constantly change depending on the business inside it. That's not how that would work. The city would determine the color of a building like this on like a prominent site like this, not the business inside it. So that's a little annoying. And I'm not really too happy with this block, so we're going to put in the fashion square here, which fills in nicely. And it seemed like a perfect opportunity to create some more art installations. I'm going to construct this out of some props from the China asset pack here, and it's pretty simple. We're just going to place a few down. And then just double them up. These are interesting props. I'm already getting a whole bunch of different ideas for what could be constructed with these. And that brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you so much for sticking around to the very end. I really do appreciate it. In next week's episode, I think it's going to be a little bit of change of pace. I think we're going to go on a little field trip to a National Historic Site, which should be fun, and get us out of the city for a day. I will see you all in the next episode. Bye.